Hey everyone, welcome back. This is Dan Hornacek with the Leading on the Frontlines podcast. Excited to be back. I hope everybody's holiday season is going well. It's been pretty busy for me and my family, which is always kind of anticipated during this time of year. Work slows down a little bit for some, gets more speedy for others. We kind of touched base on this last week. I hope everybody's been able to maintain composure and get through what's already gone on for the holiday season. There's a lot of things we're going to kind of cover today, and I'm pretty excited to talk about it. I think it correlates well with last week's episode. So again, if you haven't yet, please subscribe and rate the show. Would love to see your guys' feedback. Check me out on YouTube if you'd like to watch me and see my pretty face. If not, check out my Instagram page, Leading on the Frontlines, or on X, formerly Twitter, Leading the Front. Would love to see some engagement on there and chat with you guys there. One of the things we talked about, what I talked about last week was just kind of to validate that this is a tough time of year for a lot of people. And, the holiday season's never easy for people in just at work in general, but especially I think in management leadership positions. It could be pretty daunting. But, if we look at the positive side of things, or the optimistic side of things, it's really a good time to show your team the type of leader that you really are. And, I understand that doesn't come with ease, but, I think it's something that it kind of primes you in a way to, like I said, put your best foot forward and really be able to identify yourself as a leader. So one of the biggest things, and this has been preached to me my entire life, but never more than when I was in leadership, was patience. And I think during this time of year, it's something that is often forgot and kind of let loose, right? Because we're already, coming into the season, it's kind of like produces a little bit of anxiety or anxiousness, and then once you're in it, it's almost setting yourself up for waning patience off the get-go. So I think it's a good reminder as we're still cruising through the bulk of the holiday season. And you might be asking yourself, how does this really help me as a leader? And why is it important? And I think there's quite a few reasons. So, one of the things that the number one thing I think that patience during this type of period really goes to show your employees is that you're going to gain from your employees is their respect. They're dealing with these emotions also, right? And they're dealing with angry customers or phone calls or, just tight timelines, things like that. And you being, the person they look to for these answers, you're going to be, you're going to have a lot of pressure put on you to perform. And if you keep your patience during this period of time, that ultimately is going to create just more respect with your team. And ultimately, we've mentioned this before, if you create more respect with your team, their productivity is going to go up just tremendously. Obviously, this is a period of time typically where you need productivity to go up anyway. People generally are working harder, they're working faster, but that could create mistakes, that could create having to take or going back and fixing things and whatnot, and that reduces your productivity overall. It's kind of like, in the package handling world, you never want to touch the same package twice. That's the goal. So it's the same idea even with projects and stuff. If you have to go back and fix things, then ultimately you're wasting time, right? And it could potentially frustrate other team members, other departments, from a cross-functional impact perspective, things like that. So you're gaining respect by being patient, and you're gaining or increasing productivity innately because of that. And again, if someone does screw up, because it's going to happen, right? That's when your patience is going to play a pivotal role in maintaining that respect and then maintaining that productivity moving forward. So that's kind of an important piece to that as well. You by being patient with your team, and it could be argued that during this period of time, it's probably not the best time to provide opportunity for growth, right? Typically, especially in productivity measured companies or crews, things like that. Now's the time to just basically buckle down and do your job. But I stand to argue that by giving your people more freedom during this period, of course, observed freedom, right? So like you give them a project that needs to get done, you let them do it, let them figure it out. It's very difficult sometimes as the manager just kind of watch things happen because you might be 2, 5, 10 steps ahead of them in your mind, but you don't know what processes they have in place to get things done, and you stepping in might actually falter them from getting it done timely, right? Because you just don't know. So a couple things, right? Being patient at this period of time when you're assigning your crew or maybe like your shift leader or what have you a task, and you're watching and observing kind of everything going around, and by allowing them that freedom and being patient with them while they're doing it, is an excellent way to really help bolster a positive culture, especially during a time like right now. Now, the caveat to that is you need to be paying attention, right? So if you do see them falling behind, or you're not communicating with that team lead or that shift leader or that crew or what have you, things could fall behind, and that is your job, just to maintain communication. Like, hey, what's your plan? Hey, where are we in your plan? Are we going to finish on time? Things like that. And it's okay to ask, like, is this a realistic time frame, or do we need to make some adjustments? That again gives a lot of onus and responsibility to that employee and makes them feel pretty important. And so that also shows patience, right? And that's just a very positive thing. And by doing this, right, so these first 3 things we're talking about, you're going to develop a real positive attitude, not only for yourself, right, because everything's going well, but your employees who, it doesn't even necessarily be who we're just talking about, the people who are responsible for handling specific projects or anything like that, but the people who are working under them, or if they are just, the people working for you, you being patient really reduces the tension in an already tense environment, right? And really this could be either way. Like I mentioned before, this could be a slow season, or it could be fast-paced in a busy season. Typically, let's be real, it's typically a busy season, so I'll kind of talk from that perspective. But there's nothing worse than when you're trying to get something done, you've got somebody harping on you. I could think, when working for my dad, trying to get some stuff done, you have a plan, you feel really good about your plan, and then it's kind of like the wind's kind of taken out of your sails because it's, we need to go faster, we need this, and it's like, I know all of that. You don't need to remind me, right? And I think oftentimes people are put in that position by their managers where they understand the expectation, they understand what needs to get done by the time frame, yet you have kind of a manager nagging behind you that something needs to get done. That's not going to help. That's not going to create a positive attitude, and honestly, it's going to lower the quality of work that's being produced. So by being patient with your people, allowing them to kind of figure out and develop plans and execute those plans, you're going to develop a pretty positive attitude with that employee. And that's going to carry over after too. And that's kind of the gift that keeps on giving, because not only during this period of time that's stressful, now when that's over, that positive attitude is going to carry over. And that's really good. One thing that kind of goes along with that last point is, I mentioned observe a few times, right? You need to observe, you need to communicate, you need to, watch and make sure that things don't actually fall behind. But what that's doing for you is creating improved time management for you. Because if you're able to accomplish that by taking a step back and just watching your crew and observing, and maybe being able to have one-on-ones with your crew, you're innately improving your time management because you're allowing yourself time to do that during the busiest season, right? And people are always going to say the boss works the least, typically, right? Like there's that kind of stigma about management. But if you're patient and chill, right, about everything, and you can sit back, and that allows you to organize your day more accordingly, set up those one-on-ones and keep to a schedule. And then, of course, you need to adapt if things pop up, which they will, but that's okay, because then if you do have kind of an itinerary for your day, you have something to fall back on, right? When things kind of get realigned. So another thing, we kind of touched base on this a couple points ago, is that your team is going to grow, right? And this could be whether or not you're responsible for other managers or just an office team or things like that. You're really setting the stage for very quick cultural growth within your team. And it's in a way, it's kind of a blessing, right? Because typically culture building and growth and whatnot takes a lot of time, right? Because the mundane periods of time, in the middle of the summer or what have you, everyone's just kind of going through the motions. That's where, if you've noticed, people kind of like create these team building things or company picnics and that sort of thing. They're trying to grow and positively impact the culture of the company. And that's great. I think it's wonderful for companies to do that. But I think it's a very big missed opportunity by allowing your teams to have freedom to either manage projects or being patient with them while they're working through problems. This is ultimately going to allow your team to grow, and you don't have to do anything. All you're doing is being patient and making sure timelines are being followed. So I think it's oftentimes a very big missed opportunity by managers to grow your team and develop the culture within your team and in the organization. So the other side of it too is, right, and this kind of depends on the type of work that you do or manage, but it allows, we're typically rush. Some ebb and flow, right? So you're working on a project, the project's completed, the next project comes in, and then the next project comes in. Or, if it's phone calls into the office, or if it's, support within a different department, things like that. I think it's an important piece to allow recovery time. This doesn't have to be for your whole team, right? Because if you're sitting there and you have certain people taking on more at certain times, I think it's important that when they come back from that and just taking over their normal job duties, do a quick check-in, just a real quick 5-10 minute check-in one-on-one with them, and then allow them just to kind of get settled back in their normal position, because they're still going to be kind of amped up from having to take on those extra responsibilities. And that sounds a little extreme. It can. I kind of understand how it could. But I mean, putting yourself in that position of being either highly stressed or really focused on multiple things at one time, and then kind of coming off of that, I believe that by being patient with that person and giving them a breather is really, really beneficial. That's a personal opinion of mine. And then to that last example, if you are allowing that recovery time, that means you are able to adapt to a change. Right? I think being adaptive in the moment, it's very difficult. It's very easy, I should say, to shoot from the hip and make a quick decision. But if all these previous things are being done, it'll be very easy for you to adapt to change. And so if you're being patient with your employees while they're creating processes and making decisions, if something goes wrong, it's okay, because you can then step in as the manager, as the quote-unquote person who knows more or what have you, and then make that adaptation to what they're doing. And then by doing that, you're still allowing them to take ownership of what they were doing, which is pretty cool, because they're still having that kind of ownership and that feel good. But by taking that breather and just allowing individuals time to create better processes or new processes is something they're already doing, and essentially just don't jump in immediately unless you have to, and then when you do, you've had time to process it and create plan B and C, which I think is pretty important. So the next point that I have, I think, kind of goes right along with the first, but I think it's important to kind of touch base on again. So the first point being, you're going to build respect with your team. you're also going to build a reputation within your organization. Depending on what you're doing, if it's a small business or if it's, a large Fortune 500 company or a medium-sized Fortune 100 company, your reputation, I believe, is very important. And I wrote a blog on this, and I think we've talked about this in the podcast too, where the way people view you is very important. You want people to want to work for you, and you want your leadership to look at you as like, wow, look at this culture they're building. They're very reliable. The teams that he puts together are successful the majority of the time, and things like that. So, by implementing the previous things we talked about, you're going to innately increase your reputation within your organization. I think that's pretty good, a pretty good place to be. So, and by doing that, you're going to achieve greater results, right? Because now you have a team that feels good about where they're going into the busy season. They respect you as a manager and your decision making. You're giving them these freedoms of growing their, whatever it might be, their intelligence on doing a specific project or creating processes, or just kind of letting them do their job. I mean, that sounds simple, but a lot of people have micromanagers that just don't allow them just to work and do their job. By doing this, you're going to create better productivity. You're going to create better ideas from your people, and you're just going to achieve greater results ultimately. And I think that by kind of wrapping all of these together, you're immediately going to improve your listening. The stuff that, and I'm not necessarily talking about to your employees. I'm certainly that's included, but I mentioned this a few times, aggressively observing, right? You're watching, and you're kind of listening to the tone of your employees, because everything I've talked about is great, but how do you even know when these things need to happen, right? And you need to listen. You need to see the nonverbal cues from people on your team. Is somebody too stressed? Do they need some recovery time? Is somebody anxious to take on more projects? Because just as much as like we look at people and we overwhelm them with too much work, typically there's somebody who maybe you look at as who can't take it on, and then they're underutilized, right? And that's a productivity killer right there. Or it's something where you could be beating your metrics exponentially if you utilize them for something different. And then of course, I mentioned one-on-ones a few times today. That's something very important. You need to listen to your people, because even your best people will get burnt out. They're going to get frustrated. They're going to get mean. They might say something wrong to a customer, things like that. And if you're not listening to them, I think that's a huge deal, a huge failure on your part if you're not doing that. So that's kind of my list of things that help with just being patient. Take a breath, take a moment, observe more, and you're going to gain respect and grow your reputation with your company. Your people will love you. The people will work harder for you because they feel more inclined to, because they have a sense of responsibility and ownership within the organization. And there's really only positive things. And two, I think this isn't said enough, is when you screw up and you have that moment, that bad moment where you're being impatient, or maybe you say something out of line or that you don't mean, or maybe you raise your voice, what have you. Not only if you're being patient up to that point, is it looked at a lot differently and with a little more grace, but you can recover from that from a perspective of the lens your people see you through. So I think that's pretty important too. So take these with as you will. I think they're pretty good stuff. They're pretty good points to follow as we climb over the hill and get to the peak and start our descent down in the holiday season here. I hope everyone's doing good. That's all I got for you today. Again, please subscribe, rate, and review. I would love to see your feedback. Check me out on social media, and we'll talk to you guys later. Have a good day.